taking time out of your schedule for this interview, Ms. Matthews. I know you must be very busy.
Oh, we are busy, but I'm happy to talk to you. I've been speaking at colleges and universities on family law for several years and really enjoy working with the students. Family law is a very exciting area of law, and it's one in which paralegals can play an important role.
Right. I think just about everyone I know has had some contact with family law, usually because they're getting divorced.
Well, divorce is certainly a big part of our practice, but we also do happy things like adoption. If you don't mind, I'd like to focus on the big picture for this interview and discuss some of the recent developments in family law. For instance, the institution of marriage has certainly changed over the years.
That's fine with me. Where would you like to start?
Well, I guess the first point I'd like to make is that marriage isn't just a romantic, private relationship between two people. The state is also involved in a marriage. It determines who can get married, it licenses marriages, and it creates laws to accommodate changes in society's view of marriage. It also has the final word on how a marriage can be dissolved and in decisions regarding children and property.
Now, you mentioned issues in the laws regarding marriage changing. Can you give me some examples?
Sure. It's hard to believe now, but until the middle of the 1800s, women pretty much gave up their property rights when they got married. Over the next 100 years, 100 years, women gradually got more and more equality in marriage. But it wasn't until the late 1960s that courts started striking down marital laws based on gender. They based their holdings on the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Since then, courts consider marriage to be an almost contractual relationship.
That certainly isn't very romantic.
No, but the courts and the legislatures have had to deal with many societal changes in the last 50 years.
For instance?
Well, I guess the first one that comes to mind is the Supreme Court case that struck down the laws barring interracial marriage, Loving versus Virginia. That was in 1967. And again, it's hard to believe now, but many states outlawed marriage between whites and blacks. This was the first case in which the Supreme Court limited the authority of the states to say who could and could not marry.
But there are laws about who can get married, right?
Certainly. Every state does not allow marriage between family members. The degree of kinship varies among states, and all states prohibit marriages, people being married to one spouse when they're still married to another. That's bigamy. And polygamy is also against the law. That's where a person has multiple spouses at the same time, although some religious groups do practice polygamy. And there's usually an age requirement for marriage. Most states set the minimum age at about 14 years, but that's with parental consent. At 18, a person can get married with or without consent. And then the state also regulates and licenses marriage. A couple that wants to get married must obtain a marriage license, and this involves meeting certain conditions of eligibility. For example, some states require the parties to take a blood test in order to ensure neither one has a venereal disease. And then the marriage must be performed by someone authorized to perform the marriage, and the license must be recorded. So you can see the state has a real presence in marriage.
Now, is there another example of how society's attitudes have affected family law?
Yes, the legal recognition of non-married couples. Up until about 1976, the courts didn't want to get involved in resolving the dissolution of relationships between people that were living together but not married. They didn't want to be viewed as sanctioning these relationships. Then, in the landmark case of Marvin versus Marvin, the court held that cohabitating partners could enter into express contracts even if they hadn't formalized their relationship. So what that meant was that the court could settle suits between partners who wanted to dissolve their relationship, just like they could settle contract disputes.
So I assume this is where the domestic partnership comes in.
Correct. In our state, an unmarried couple can register with the state and in turn receive some of the benefits that married couples receive. The biggest consideration is the ability to receive health insurance and other employment benefits. So just like interracial marriage, living together and not being married is not nearly as scandalous as it was 40 or 50 years ago.
Now, what about same-sex marriage? That seems to be the hottest topic in family law these days.
Same-sex marriage is a very complicated issue. People had very strong opinions about interracial marriage, and people certainly have strong opinions about same-sex marriage. Our Constitution was amended just a couple years ago to declare same-sex marriage invalid. And then we also have a law that defines marriage as being between a man and a woman. But just as you know, several states now recognize same-sex marriage. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when a same-sex couple married in one state moves to another state that may not recognize their marriage. This is going to be an ongoing battle in the courts for many years to come.
Well, it's no wonder that you enjoy speaking to family law students. I'll bet the discussions in all the classes are really interesting.
Yes, we do have some very exciting discussions. You know, family law affects everybody in some way. It's the intersection of the personal with the legal, which is what makes it so difficult to write good laws about divorce, for instance. But family law is a fascinating and exciting area of law, and one in which many paralegals work in family law firms, state agencies, and private agencies that handle family matters. So I encourage all students to at least consider family law as a career option.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This article will be in next week's school newspaper. We're actually doing a whole series of articles promoting the paralegal program, and I think this is going to be a terrific lead-off article. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.